Hello, everybody. Hi, everybody is doing. I hope everybody's doing great. Thank you so much for joining in. This is our live session. It's about, as we have been posting, this is one of our biggest collaboration of podcasts with any company. Now, Exponential is collaborating for the podcast with Flippa. So we have Dominic Sullivan with us. He is the senior mergers and acquisition expert for EMEA region, and he is one of the uh, core part of this division of understanding the assets flipping and buying through flippa.com. So, welcome, Dominic. You are being amazing since we have been starting this. So, I welcome you here for this podcast, and let's start off with a little bit introduction about Flippa. Flippa is, like, everybody knows Flippa, who is in the space of digital assets building and e-commerce and online marketplaces. They know a lot about Flippa. So Flippa is a marketplace for buying and selling your online assets, online businesses. They are based in Texas, US, and also I think in Melbourne, Australia. It was founded in June 2009. So online businesses for sell is basically Flippa making it simple and effective for you to sell your e-commerce stores, your websites, your digital assets, your applications, whatever you have built in the space of digital industry. That's where you can flip through flippa.com. So the word flip is coming through Flippa. So
Exactly.
this is one of the core foundations of it. So I welcome you here, Dominic Sullivan. Thank you so much for being part of this and accepting our invitation for this. Really appreciate that. So I would want you to introduce yourself a bit, so everybody should know about you and your experiences and your background and everything. So let's hear it from
Of,
you.
of course. Yeah. Well, firstly, thanks very much for having me, Danish. And it's great to be collaborating with Exponential and seeing what you guys are doing. It's fantastic. A bit about myself. Well, originally I'm from Sydney, Australia. I moved to Amsterdam about 6 years ago. I've worked in the M&A space for about 8 years now. Initially, I worked in more financial due diligence at a Big Four accounting firm. So I worked for a number of private equity firms, mostly out of Europe, and strategic corporates that were basically looking at businesses to acquire. And deal size range was from, let's say, 50 million right up to 5 billion euros. I then moved to a strategic startup, scale up company, Vinted. It's the largest marketplace for secondhand clothes. And there I helped also acquire, I was part of the team that helped acquire both public and private companies. So we acquired a public company out of Sweden and some private companies as well. So I've worked on deals around the world, ranging from, let's say, 50 million to 5 billion euros, as I was saying. And then a couple of years ago, I joined the fascinating online business world, which honestly I was very ignorant of. I didn't know much about it. Of course, I knew about SaaS companies and e-commerce, but I never knew about the passive income and the side hustles that people were doing and how valuable they were. And I just fell in love with working more with founders. Changing from working in a team, working directly with the CFO, CEO, board. Of course, that was very enjoyable and I learned a lot. But I get so much more energy with working with founders who have built a business and are looking to exit to private equity or family offices or strategic corporates or just mum and dads or people who just want to flip businesses. So yeah, now I'm here. I've been here for 2 years, and I specifically work on sell side M&A, so founders who want to exit. And my region is Europe, the Middle East, and Northern Africa. So we have a lot of business out of Dubai. We have a lot of business in Europe, UK, Netherlands, Belgium, Switzerland, Scandinavia. And yeah, now I'm here.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Great to know your experience and great to talk to someone who has so rich experience in this era, in this field, in this domain. This is so amazing to know, Dominic.
Yeah.
Right, let's get started with some of our questions, and let's take some of the questions in the meantime if anybody is asking in the live session. So
Sure.
this session is basically live, but it will be available on all our socials, so you can just directly get you get your access through that. So whoever has missed this, you can have access to our socials right away, after this session as well. So you can be a part of it too. So this is, the session is technically about private label sellers, and it's about whoever is building their private label assets, not through Amazon or any other marketplace. It's also through Shopify, your own store, or any medium through which you have built something of your own brand, which you can call it yourself as a private label, and you have a certain value and certain profitability that you have reached out, and you are looking to evaluate Flippa, you are looking to evaluate Exponential. So we are here to help you out and understand and make you understand the valuation of your asset at this stage. So there is a lot of detail, process, and calculations, a lot of maths involved in order to define or in order to determine the value of a certain asset. So I have a few questions, Dominic. So let's get started with that. The first question I have is, what is the typical mergers and acquisition (M&A) process for someone wanting to sell or buy a digital asset via Flippa.com?
Yeah, I mean, it's often the case that you get a lot of sellers who don't realize first that their business is worth something of value. So I guess the first step is certainly understanding that your business is worth something and figuring out what that valuation may be. So, at Flippa, we very much, through our M&A advisory arm, you definitely have someone that holds your hand through the process. So, first is deciding you want to sell. It can be an emotional roller coaster, and accepting that your baby, you're about to, you've built something and now it's ready. I guess the second thing is to make sure that you have your financials in order, okay? Making sure that you have financial hygiene, your monthly profit and loss, your key metrics. So if it's in e-commerce, what your return on ad spend is, have a good overview of what your key products are that you're selling and data on that. These are some of the key kind of items that a buyer will want to know. So that needs to be organized. Once you have the monthly P&L organized, you can then really get to understand what the valuation will be, because often the valuation is based on the profit and loss, the last 12 months profit that you've been generating. Once you have a valuation in mind, then you'll basically sign up to the marketplace, and you'll then write basically an overview of your company. And we structure it similar to an IM, an information memorandum. And basically in that memorandum, you go over what the business is in terms of the business overview, the key financials, the key operations, the opportunities, and also some threats, and give it a real transparent view on next steps. So you want to make sure that on the platform you have a very good overview of what your business is about, because you have hundreds, sometimes thousands of people viewing the business, accepting the NDA and viewing the business. Usually once they accept the NDA and read about your business, then there's follow-up questions. So then they'll want to ask, can I have a management meeting? Can I have a meeting with you to learn more about your business? Can I review some documents? And typically your advisor will do that, and will make sure that they're legitimate and that they have good interest in the company that they want to acquire, because we don't want to waste the time of the founder yet. And in that management call, you kind of understand more about the business, you understand their motivations, you understand the background about their financing. Do they have financing in place? Are they able to afford a business of your size? Do they need external loans, or are they planning to use their capital? You really want to understand that early on. And then, if all goes well in that meeting, they'll then progress through to receiving a data room. And that's where they have a thorough analysis of not sensitive information, but information about your business that will allow them to make a decision as to whether or not they move forward. Once they're in that review, they'll then decide to make an offer of a non-binding offer, a letter of intent. And that's basically the buyer saying to the seller, I like your business. From what I've seen so far, these are the terms that I'm offering, this valuation, this payment structure, do you accept? Sometimes there's a bit of back and forth. As an advisor, I try and give a deadline to all the buyers. So they're all competing for the best offer, and it raises urgency. Then once you accept the LOI, right, the non-binding LOI as a seller with the buyer, you agree to terms, and then you start due diligence. And that process can be very rigorous, very, very tiring. We'll probably go through it later in detail, but basically once the due diligence is completed, you then sign the purchase agreement, and that's binding. So the asset purchase agreement or share purchase agreement, that's binding. And then and that's also provided by Flippa. Of course, you use your own lawyer if you wish, but we also provide that. And then once the purchase agreement is signed, you then go into escrow. So then what happens there is the buyer transfers the money to escrow. The seller then transfers the assets or the business to the buyer. And then the escrow then releases the money to the seller once the buyer confirms that they've received the assets. So a lot of information. Maybe people have some more questions, of course, but after our podcast or after our webinar, they can always contact either you or I to discuss more questions. But that's the overview.
All right, interesting. That's a quite detailed overview. I think it's very much, you can say, self-explanatory. But some of the things that are that you have mentioned are obviously the steps that everybody needs to follow, because there is a certain protocols to adopt before you jump into this. And you really need to understand the process and all the structure and all the requirement need to be met and taken care of before anybody would like to move ahead with any of these offers. So as I think you have mentioned briefly about it, but let me just rephrase the question is, before selling any business, what are some of the things that an owner can do to optimize their readiness, make it more attractive, or you can say more sellable, more flippable? What are the things they need to take care of, before doing so? So, what are the factors?
That's a great question, and I also have an online business myself, and eventually I will sell it, hopefully. And I'm thinking about those things. So, I think that one of the key things actually is make it easy for a buyer to understand your business. Okay, you want to make it as easy as possible for them to review your business. So have everything organized, have proper financial hygiene, have a proper monthly P&L, track your KPIs every month. Basically have your house in order, right? In terms of the business. I've seen many deals in my career where the business is a fantastic business, but the buyer is just like, they have options, right? So they're just kind of like, look, this is too difficult. I have 10 other deals on my desk. I want to go for the more straightforward one. That's probably the most important thing I'd say. So be organized, right? Whether you have a good bookkeeper, whether you use resources, whether you ensure that you're disciplined in your monthly reporting, please make sure that you have good financial hygiene. I think something else to ensure with optimizing readiness is make sure that it's a business that can be taken over easily. Have a standalone business operating. Do not make it dependent on yourself. If you make the business dependent on yourself, it's very hard to sell. Most buyers that I work with, or that are on Flippa, or just in general, right, our competitors as well, any buyer of a business is buying it usually for financial reasons, and they're buying it not to have a headache. So if there's already a general manager in place, or a virtual assistant, or someone that is easily replaceable, right? If you're replaceable as the seller, as the founder, perfect. Try and make yourself replaceable, and you'll put yourself in a very good position. And that ties with making your brand independent of you. And of course, you're dealing more in the e-commerce space. So I think, obviously the brand is very important, but try and divorce your identity with that brand. Because that's very hard. So when you're producing marketing materials, content assets, don't have yourself all over the brand. Make sure that, again, you're replaceable. I think another thing to optimize readiness is make sure that you have clear, let's say, a clear understanding of how your business financially operates. So it ties with financial hygiene, obviously, but a lot of people mix their personal expenses with their business expenses. Make sure you have a clear P&L that clearly shows how much it costs for your business to operate. Okay. And I think, of course, one of the most obvious ones is show that there's growth, right? Show that there's stable recurring income with growth. That's obviously easier said than done, but I guess that's where, agencies like yourself come in, where you can really help with that. So you have to make the buyer excited that there's upside for them acquiring the business, and the best way to show that is through growth and stable income and stable profits.
Interesting. With this response, I got a question for you. How much do you think is a very attractive year-on-year growth for a brand? For example, a brand is being built like 3 years back,
Yeah,
and brand is continuously growing at a year-on-year growth rate of at least 15% every
yeah,
year. So how do you see this adds up to the attraction, and how this adds up to higher multiples of that asset to be evaluated, and how good that will be for a brand in terms of flipping it at the end? Now, like if I have purchased a brand of like at 100 grand, all right,
yeah,
and on year one, year two, year three, we are continuously on a stable year on year 15% growth.
hmm,
So, from your experience and obviously from the history of whatever database you guys have for all these assets that you have flipped and successfully made these deals, how much should this add to the multiples of any assets? How much you can say this help us to sell it at a certain multiple that we want to sell it? Like, for example, if
hmm,
the average multiples is 25x, I want to sell it at 40x or
yeah,
50x.
yeah,
What are the factors to consider in order to have my own choice of valuation or my own choice of multiple that I can get at the end? I don't
yeah,
want to go with the market average. I want to go with my demand of multiples, which I am thinking or pursuing to have.
yeah.
What do you think about it?
Yeah, so I think that's a fantastic question. So what I first want to say is, and maybe I should have said it earlier, when deciding to sell your business, make sure that you're not declining. It's interesting for me when I think sometimes sellers often look to sell 6 to 12 months too late. And it's the nature of you as a founder. I think, you've built a business, it's growing, it's doing really well. Why sell? Actually, often that's the best time to sell. And founders often come to us when they're thinking, okay, now it's the revenues are stable, but they're kind of in decline a little bit. It's a lot harder to sell when a business is obviously declining. So I think before I answer your question, I think it's important that if you're in the position right now where you have a business that's growing, okay, unless you want to run this for the next 10 years, different conversation. Or maybe 10 years is even too long. 5 years, different conversation. But please it's all about timing. Make sure that you're looking to exit as you're growing. Of course, there's a chance that you sell and it grows even more. But in life, you can't win everything, okay? It will contribute to a strong multiple. So to answer your question directly, how can you be in control of your multiple, right? Or what things can you do to be in control of your multiple when you're looking to sell? Well, for starters, it's making sure you're exiting at the right time, which is when you're in a growth phase. The second thing is what contributes to multiples. I mean, there's so many factors, but I think one thing is the nature of your revenue, okay? If you're in e-commerce and if you have the nature of your products are recurring, right? And we know supplements, cosmetics, they're very attractive because people have a high purchasing volume amount or regular purchasing volume, okay? And therefore, buyers can then very much predict revenue, and it can be more of a stable business. And the customer lifetime value can often be more predictable as well. So that's more attractive versus the type of product. I think also what helps in terms of being in control of your multiple is competition. If you're in a space where it's very competitive and you're not a niche, your brand isn't a niche and clear, I think that you're in less of a chance of commanding your multiple. And I would say, like, the final factor, as always, again, from the experience that I've had with selling a lot of businesses, and again, I'm kind of focusing more on e-commerce for the audience that we're speaking with. It's making sure that you've diversified your risk and suppliers, not being too dependent on, and when I say suppliers, I mean your suppliers of your products, but also in terms of your revenues, right? Having different channels, not just having Amazon, having Shopify, Amazon, B2B as well, B2C. Maybe the nature of your product can only be B2C, but try and have alternate sources of revenue. I think that's really important. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question.
All right. Makes sense. Great. We are getting some questions from the audience as well.
Oh, great.
But I think let me jump over with one of my questions for now, and then we'll move over to the audience questions for sure. Now, very interesting question, since I am from the background of e-commerce. So
Sure.
I would preferably be asking questions related to e-commerce, and then my audience who is actually watching us live, they are also most likely be from the e-commerce background. But for the non-e-commerce background, I have a different question for you. What type of businesses are being sold on Flippa usually? And what asset class are you most excited about at the moment as an M&A expert?
Okay, so I would say Flippa is known mostly for selling e-commerce, mobile apps, SaaS, agencies, content businesses. They're probably our 5 core, and it's in no particular order, to be honest. We're all pretty strong in those, and we are the go-to marketplace for these, just because of the amount of buyers that we have. I think we have over 1.7 million buyers last time I checked, which is an insane amount, mostly from the US. And might I add, I know this doesn't answer the question yet, but 67% of our deals are actually cross-border, which means 2 out of 3 deals are bought from someone living in another country, which for me is incredible. I can't think of many marketplaces that have such a strong kind of cross-border or global scale, let's say, global reach. But back to like the types of businesses. So they're the types of businesses. Now, outside of that, we also sell KDP businesses. We sell YouTube channels. We sell, what else do we sell? Newsletters. Even newsletters have value. I would probably say, if you asked me 2 years ago when I joined, I was amazed with SaaS. I loved, 1, the recurring revenue. 2, I loved the scalability, right? And 3, I loved the nature of sticky clients, and I thought SaaS is the way to go. However, the last 3 to 6 months, you see AI. Now, is AI a threat? Probably. And I'm noticing that people are shifting more towards e-commerce. So like 2 years ago, the flavor of the month, I would say, was SaaS. And I'm talking generally. There are plenty of good SaaS companies out there. And e-commerce was kind of a bit, maybe stay away from it in general. However, the last not even 3 months, the last 6 months, I would say, 6 to 9 months, you're looking at a real rebound of e-commerce and a lot more acquirers who are coming from real estate, coming from traditional kind of investment classes and moving to more tangible products. So that's interesting. I think the most excited, it's going to surprise you, YouTube channels. It's I first 12 months ago, I was in a meeting in London, and I was meeting with a private equity firm, and we were talking about they acquire a lot of e-commerce brands. And in the meeting, we're talking about what they've acquired and what they're looking for. And the guy goes to me, "Oh, by the way, do you have any YouTube channels for sale?" And I looked at him and I said, "YouTube channels? No." Like, why? "Oh yeah, we're really bullish on a couple at the moment. We have a golf brand, and we just acquired this golf review channel for X amount. I can't share the amount, but it was a lot. It was 7 figures, right? And that traffic just directly relates to our golf brand, and we're acquiring a lot more products through that." And I thought, wow, rather than there are different ways to grow and spend money on marketing. I thought that was really effective. So YouTube channels are very, very interesting for me at the moment. People are obviously acquiring them for many reasons. I think also because it generates money, right? Obviously, through ads. But at the same time, you're building a brand, community, customer base that can latch on to brands. So yeah, that's probably it.
Amazing. YouTube channel, this is something, people over here in Pakistan would be really interested to know, because we
really?
have so many content creators making so much money.
Yeah.
So this is something of an interest definitely for the Pakistani audience, especially who are becoming or aspire to become a content creator and YouTuber.
Yeah.
All right. So Dominic, we have a lot of questions from the audience right now. So let me take one by one.
Sure.
All right. So we have a question from Syed Ali Arsalan. He's asking, hi, from the perspective of building an e-commerce business with the goal of selling or exiting in the future, what approach should I take? What time frame should I consider? And what factors should I keep in mind before starting during the business operation and at the time of exit?
Great question, Syed. Okay, so let me break this down because it is a big question, and the question will stay up, right? I can see it now. So I would say time frame. Look, it is very hard to, let's work backwards, okay? Remember, the goal is to sell a business that's easy for someone to take over, okay? And a business which has a history of generating profits and brand. The way to do that is through having a brand that's been in place for at least 2 to 3 years. I think if you try and sell a business for less than 1 year, it's too early, right? And the multiple will reflect that. The offers you'll get will reflect that. So it's important, in terms of time frame, I think at least 2 to 3 years, right? I would probably, build it for 2 years, then start speaking with an advisor from 2 years, right? And then, or before then already start having proving growth. Then on the second year, start looking to exit, because it takes around 6 to 9 months to exit. By the way, it's not something like you sell like a pair of jeans, right? Of course, sometimes, but most of the time not. And so you're probably looking between that second and third year, of looking to exit. So that's the first thing. And then what factors should I keep in mind before starting during the operation? Yeah, I think I answered it before, but starting, think of a niche. The more niche, the better, in my view. Okay. You obviously want many products. You don't want to be dependent on 1 or 2 products, right? You do want to have a diversified or diversified product concentration, but think of a niche community, for example, collectibles of comics, right? Statues of army figurines, something like that, super niche. And I find that, they do really well. And of course, you want to make sure you establish a clear standalone business. So of course, in the beginning, you're not going to hire people, but take advantage of Fiverr.com, take advantage of these freelance marketplaces where you can hire someone to operate, the customer support tickets at some point, not in the beginning, but from that second year. Really start thinking to yourself, okay, if I'm going for a buyer and I'm going to exit, I need to make my business standalone. So someone needs to take over. I can't be dependent on me. It needs to be profitable, right? And it needs to be, let's say, growing and in a niche. Hopefully that answers the question.
Interesting. I think that is very precisely you have explained, because the question was as a big different questions under questions.
Yeah, exactly. Great questions though. Yeah,
but it's a great question. It has covered, I think, most of the very initial concerns or queries that one can have. Thank you for asking the question, Syed Ali Arslan, and really appreciate your response, Dominic. So we have a question from Samra Zishan, and she's asking, how has the rise of AI and automation impacted the buying, scaling, and selling of digital businesses? Very interesting question.
Really good question. Look, I think that it's clear now that, AI now is making knowledge less scarce. So before, right now, like lawyers can charge $1,000 an hour because they're lawyers and no one knows their knowledge, or developers can charge X dollars per hour because they're really good developers. I think knowledge is becoming less scarce, right? And so the value of knowledge is becoming almost free. And I think there's less leverage now on certain professions. And so I think with that, it means that the barriers to entry to starting businesses is less, starting online businesses is less. Therefore, the supply increases. So I do think that there's an impact there in more supply, but I think also it represents opportunity, right? And so, I'm seeing now, obviously, people, and there are AI businesses for sale on Flippa as well, where people are kind of leveraging the AI, the speed of AI to build good businesses through, UX design, development, simply customer support, chatbots. It's really optimizing their cost base. Rather than paying someone to do customer support, you can optimize that easily. When it comes to SaaS, rather than hiring 5 SDRs for making sales, you might need 2, because you can now have AI SDRs basically, and that's going to get better over time. So your cost per lead is going to get less. So there are opportunities, and I think that's all the more reason to get in the online digital space, because for me even, and again, I love my job and I really enjoy it, and there's a lot of knowledge and skills I have, but you also have to diversify, because of course the knowledge that I have is also very accessible online. And of course there's experience that you need to go through it, but you get my point. I think it's really important to diversify your income streams as a person and go into that digital space. So yeah, I would also say impact the buying, I would say. So how's AI and automation improves buying? I'd say there's a lot more, like DDs often a bit more straightforward now, due diligence, because simply you can just import, export bank statements or Xero or QuickBooks to quickly DD a business. Of course, there are some, you need to do like deep DD, but in terms of raising the high level red flags, you can make decisions a lot faster. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question, Samara. Great question.
Interesting. Very interesting. I have a question related to one of the financial terms that we use in our e-commerce business valuation. And whenever we build a P&L, we have one very important factor to consider for a brand or for an asset is SDE, seller's discretionary earnings.
Yeah.
That actually measures your business's earnings and the most common measure of your cash flow used to value any of the small business or any SME level business. So how much an asset should maintain their SDEs in order to depict as a healthy, cash rich company that has a decent cash flow, flowing through it in the company? And how much do you think is the figure to maintain in order to be declared as a decent, asset to be evaluated at a certain value?
Yeah, that's a great question. Look, it depends on the buyer. So sorry to answer your question with a question, but of course, and we can go into different buyers, right? You get buyers on Flippa who are very skilled and they don't want to buy a business that's well established and chunky enough to scale to the next level. They're happy to buy a business that maybe only has 30K SDE, 50K SDE. They won't pay much for it, but they're happy to buy something like that and still worth something. I would say it gets interesting when you're starting, 100K SDE, right? 100K profit. I think that's when you're starting, like per year. I think that's when it starts getting interesting to sell for an interesting multiple, because buyers often go to the effort of their time, money, DD of a business, time, like to acquire a business for 100,000. But of course, I've sold businesses with SDA of 50K, 60K, 70K, 20K. it just depends on the buyer.
Interesting. Great. Thank you for the answer. We have so many questions in pipeline, so we're gonna have to, keep taking it. I'm just stopping off now my questions and let me take some questions
Of
from the
course.
audience.
Yeah.
So Mohammed
And sorry, what I
Asfandiar.
should say, Danish, is after, like, of course, you can give me, and we'll go through the questions, and I'm happy to answer them separately.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Muhammad Asfandiar is asking, how do you identify whether an asset has high flipping potential, and what are some resources that can help people who are wanting to learn more about online businesses and the M&A process?
Okay. Okay, great question. So I would say, how do you identify whether an asset has high flipping potential? For me, the diamonds in the rough for me are businesses which a product. So right now I'm going to talk SaaS, a SaaS example, but of course we can give other examples. But for me, SaaS, where it's product-led growth and it's got no sales or marketing. It's like a tech guy who's very strong at tech, male or female, and builds a business, and people are signing up and paying subscriptions without much effort. I think they're really interesting because you can really scale that fast. And once you scale it, then you can command a higher multiple, and then you benefit from multiple arbitrage, which is where it gets really interesting. So they're kind of businesses which I think have high flipping potential. I think also, if you want to go even smaller, you can acquire many e-com brands and centralize the functions and benefit from economies of scale, and again benefit from multiple arbitrage. Multiple arbitrage is where you buy something, a smaller business. That's what the big famous private equity firms do, but you can do it on a smaller scale, and that's something that I would love to do one day. But basically, acquiring businesses that are operationally inefficient, buying many of them, and then creating synergies between, whether it's cross-selling similar products, centralizing, the customer support team, the IT, the maintenance, et cetera, et cetera. So they're probably like two examples of high flipping potential. I would also say, I met last week at the Amsterdam Flippa meetup. We have these meetups globally. He bought a business on Flippa for $2,000 and he flipped it to $540,000. He sold it on Flippa for $540,000. I mean, imagine getting a return like that. And that was simply, it had really good SEO traffic, and it was getting a lot of hits, but the guy just didn't have a good service offering, and he kind of altered the service and was getting he was getting certain customers coming or certain traffic, and then he offered a really nice service to complement that. Of course, that costs in time and effort. So yeah, that's a good story. And what are some resources? So there's a couple. I think the first is, so there's two that come to mind. So if you Google Flippa data insights, you can then see a lot of the data of the multiples for different types of businesses on Flippa that sell. But more specifically, learning about more online business and the M&A process, I would say Deal Execution Academy. You can Google that as well, Deal Execution Academy. They have a really good course for tech founders that go through everything step by step and explain the M&A process. In the course, there's templates, there's tools, there's Q&A. It's like a community of founders that are in a similar place. I would also say I like reading newsletters. So, blogs. One is Roll Up Europe. They're talking about roll up. That's what's inspired me to think about rolling up small businesses, and then you learn from other industries. I think that's free to sign up. They're probably some. And podcasts like these, of course.
Yeah, definitely. It's good enough, I guess, to have a kickoff from something and get going and try to learn more in the process moving ahead. All right. We have a question from Rafe Zafar. He's asking that what inspired you to specialize in mergers and acquisitions with the digital asset space?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. I could really see during COVID. So I joined 2 years ago. I shifted there. I think COVID showed me that the 9 to 5 job is kind of not over, but the younger generation, you don't want to be relying on a 9 to 5 job. You can specialize in other forms of income, producing activities or revenue streams, and side hustles. And I think that a lot of people got wind of that. And I think it's only becoming more mainstream in 5 to 10 years. I think in even 3 to 5 years, I think most people will have a side hustle because of the accessibility. And I thought, yeah, also just from a passion point of view, like I get so much energy working with founders who have built something. Of course, I had a great time in my previous career with private equity, working with private equity firms and everything. But you're selling a manufacturing plant or a mining company, or you're working with a CFO or a financial team. Of course, they're very smart and very diligent, but they're not really that passionate about the manufacturing plant. So I get a lot more, and it's just fun, like learning about new business ideas, meeting people that buy a business for $2,000, sell it for $540,000. Learning, I would say I've learned just as much from founders that I've worked with than they've learned from me in terms of M&A. So that's why.
All right. Interesting. Really appreciate your responses, Dominic. Amazing job. Okay. I think I didn't get this. Okay. We have a very interesting question. Basically, it's basically a guy who wants to flip his asset. So we've got a guy here, Muhammad Mehdi. Hi, sorry I joined late here. We are willing to flip a brand that we launched in March 2024. The average profit over the last 6 months was $4,000, and we closed January with the $10,000 profit. What hurdles do brands face if they don't have a history of more than a year? How can Flippa help these brands?
Yeah, so I would say, firstly, great business generating 4,000 profit per month. Look, hurdles that brands face if they don't have a history of more than 1 year. Yeah, it's simple. A buyer wants to acquire something with history because you've proven that it works for at least 2 to 3 years. If you have something for less than 1 year, who knows? In 6 months' time, it might just be a trend. It might be a fad. There could be competition out there that you don't know about. You need to prove yourself before you can really sell, in my opinion. Trust me, there are businesses that have sold within a year though, or 1 year old, but that's rare. Honestly, Flippa can't really help with, I would say, brands that are less than 1 year. It's probably more kind of an agency's role, I would say, that can help more with building brands and building the business. Of course, Flippa, you can put your business on the marketplace and get exposure to our buyers, but I wouldn't really help too much there because for me, I don't want to promise that I can sell something if I can't. I never promise anyway, but you get my point.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I think that answers the question. We have a question from Akash Sultan. Are e-commerce stores or SaaS platforms better investments for new buyers looking to flip assets?
Okay, e-commerce versus SaaS, the debate. Yeah, it's a tough one. I think if you heard my answers before about 2 years ago, SaaS was the flavor of the month. The last 6 months, I feel like e-commerce has kind of hit back a little bit to what it used to be. But then again, what's going on politically with Trump in terms of tariffs, that's also causing a bit of uncertainty around what costs of goods will be and everything. Yeah, I think it depends on the skills of the buyer, right? So if you're someone that has knowledge in tech or developing, I would say leverage that and acquire a SaaS business. And I would say, then leverage off affiliate programs where, I've seen SaaS businesses thrive through affiliate programs, not having to pay for marketing and growing through that way. Versus e-commerce, again, I think if you're someone that has a very good understanding of brands and ad spend, then I think you should go for e-commerce more. I mean, it depends on the skills of a buyer. If the buyer is good at both, what would I choose? I would probably choose, despite the threat of AI, I would probably choose SaaS. That's because I have bias, but I just like the recurring nature of income and revenue, the predictability of it. And I like the scalability of SaaS as well. So I probably would stick with SaaS. So hopefully that answers the question, Akash.
All right, interesting. Okay. We have a question from Mohammed Zain. Is it worth investing in digital assets? So many questions now again.
Yeah.
Which type of digital asset sells quickly on Flippa and has high demand? As a newbie looking to invest, how can I measure which digital asset will be the most profitable? In real estate, we can predict future value, but how does it work in the digital space? What are the best high demand niches to focus on?
Okay, all very good questions, and I'll try and break it up as much as possible. Is it worth investing in digital assets? Yes, it is. I believe, as I've said before, I think it's good with AI and with the way the world's going to not rely on your 9-to-5 job and to diversify your revenue streams and build something in the online space. It's super accessible, and I've learned so much in the last couple of years of successful people that have done it. So yes, it is worth investing. Types of digital assets that sell quickly. At the moment, it's YouTube channels. The team are performing so well that are specializing in YouTube. And it's just because I think it's the flavor of the last couple of months. What I don't like about YouTube, by the way, is that it's dependent on YouTube. There's no way to diversify. So that's something that I don't like. But that's the skeptic in me. I'm always a skeptical person. I'm an accountant, so we're trained to be skeptical. So yeah, I would say as a newbie looking to invest, how can I measure which digital asset will be the most profitable? I mean, that's quite a hard question to answer, to be honest, because yeah, any business can be profitable. It depends on the skills. It depends on your passion. Do something that you enjoy and something that you're going to be dedicated to and what you're good at. That's really the common denominator of all the successful founders that I work with and that had profitable businesses. They like what they do for starters, and they have skills in that place. If you want to sell shoes, but you don't care about shoes or design, we'll probably do something else. I would also say it's important to have a niche. I've spoken about this before. For example, I sold a great business out of Dubai that wasn't shoes. It was shoes for larger people, right? Shoes for people who are overweight. And that's such a good niche. A lot of his traffic was out of the US. They were stylish. They looked good, and they were shoes for people that had, very big feet. I've also seen shoes sell for orthopedic shoes, and just specializing in shoes for old people that have feet issues. So, be more niche. In real estate, we predict future value. How does it work? And yeah, I mean, you can't predict anything really. Also real estate, by the way. So I would say, of course, you can do your best to make an informed decision. I would say in the digital space, yeah, you look at like your previous growth and like any financial model, look at previous growth and then look at, the resources that you need or the growth that you've achieved with the current resources you have in terms of sales and marketing spend and FTE, and then applying that same formula to what you're willing to invest in terms of resources. And the best high demand niches to focus on. Yeah, I'm seeing so many like supplements, cosmetics, high margins. I'm talking e-commerce. Yeah, I think the shoes example is a good one. Don't sell shoes. Sell shoes for a specific market. super niche. Hopefully that answers your questions, Mohammed.
Great. Excellent responses again, Dominic. Okay. We have a question from Inshara Farid. She's asking that what specific niches within digital assets show the highest growth potential in 2024, I guess, not 2025. Should be 2024.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So great resource. I said it earlier, Flippa Data Insights. There you can actually see, if you Google it now for people that are watching, and you scroll down, there's like trending search terms. So there's a summary of different data models. One is like trending search terms. And, something that I've seen a lot this year has been education, online education. So I think that that's something that seems to be a trend. People are wanting to provide resources more. Again, knowledge, even though knowledge is going to be more scarce with AI, it's a little bit contradictory when I think about it, but that's an interesting space. I would also say, like, I was looking at the trending terms recently, wellness, more luxury kind of items are very popular at the moment, but that's dependent on brand. Active wear. That's what I'm seeing to be quite popular at the moment in the e-commerce space.
Okay.
But, I love the questions. I'm also conscious of time as well, Danish. So we, of course, we have to. We'll keep going, but of course, we can answer them also after the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. We have a question from Samra Zishan again. What role do content-based assets, blogs, YouTube channels play in the current asset flipping landscape?
Yeah. So I would say, I think it was maybe 6 to 12 months ago, there was that huge hit, as people were probably aware, with the Google algorithm on content and blogs. And so that really shook up the industry and that crashed multiples. You'll see that in the Flippa Data Insights of the multiples over the last 12 months. So content businesses have taken quite a hit. And I think that combined with the Google algorithm hit, you also then have AI just generating articles, so it's becoming, I guess, less scarce content. But at the same time, YouTube channels, it's our fastest growing asset class on Flippa. There's a lot of demand for it. I think the key is having community, right? Having a niche community that regularly content is super important. And I think the way people are the nature of the way people consume content now is not by reading blogs, it's by watching YouTube. And you can see that with children, right? Children are watching YouTube all the time, and now they're going to be getting older and continuing to consume content through YouTube. So rather than reading blogs. So that's my view.
All right, great. I think we have covered most of the questions. I would like to ask some of the questions that I have, very important ones for the audience. So let me just conclusively ask a couple of more questions to you.
Sure.
Okay. What are the standard multiples that you guys are seeing in the market? Does it differ per asset class, differ per type of an asset, type of a nature of a business? How does that differ? And what are the standard multiples you guys are seeing at an average?
Yeah. So I would say for e-commerce, you're probably looking at around 2 to 3 times. When I say 2 to 3 times, I mean 2 to 3 times profit multiple for the last 12 months. So if your profit for the last 12 months was 100,000, you're looking at between 200,000 and 300,000 in terms of an enterprise value or sale price. Now, of course, you have stronger businesses, stronger niche, more growth, then you might be looking more at a 3 multiple or a 3.5 multiple, right? If you're hitting $1 million in profit in EBITDA, you're definitely looking at 3.5 multiple. Okay, but if you're looking at 100,000 EBITDA, you're looking more at around 2 to 3. Or also the age of the business basically also adds to that multiple. SaaS, you're looking at 3 to 5 in terms of profit multiple. Again, you're probably as a SaaS, you probably can only really sell once you're hitting 100K SDE or EBITDA for those types of multiples.
Interesting. Very important question, obviously, for those who actually are willing to, list their assets at flippa.com. So what does Flippa charge for their platform and the services? What does they charge? What are
Yep.
the charges?
Yeah, so we really back the platform to deliver. So we're more success fee. Now, of course, there is a listing fee, which shows commitment from the seller. I mean, at the end of the day, I think the first answer to the first question was it's an emotional roller coaster selling your business. You need to be committed. You can't do it half in. Basically, there's a listing package as a self-service. So if you just want to sell the business and you are going to be in the deal room talking with buyers, of course, you can reach out to assistants, and we have a very capable team that assist. And that listing package is, I think, around $100 or so. It varies. And then there's a success fee. Now that success fee ranges from 10% to 5%, or 5 to 10%, I should say, on the value of the business. Then, if you want to work with an advisor like myself, the upfront cost is $1,300, and then it's the same success fee, basically. So the difference is $1,300 essentially, and yeah, that's basically what you get for the advisor is they help you from A to Z, help you prepare for the sale in terms of writing the IM or the documents, right, that need to be prepared, guiding you throughout the process, being in the management calls with you, helping you throughout due diligence, helping you with the asset purchase agreement, and then right to the end of the sale. But of course, I don't want to underplay the self-service function. It is incredible. You really can do it. You don't always need an advisor, I should say. Should be very clear on that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Sorry, I have to take another question from the audience. It's a very interesting question.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm just
No
thinking
worries.
All right. We have a question from Daniel Aluddin. What are the biggest red flags that potential buyers look for when acquiring an e-commerce business?
Great question. So red flags, I think first thing, because obviously I speak with buyers every day, and I also get their criteria, right? So I think the biggest thing is for sure age, right? The age of the business. If it's less than 1 year, they're not usually interested. I think the second thing is refund rate, return rates. Okay, so understanding, how high are the refund rates or return rates. Obviously, the ROAS, return on ad spend. That's something that buyers always want to understand from the beginning. Can they scale the business? Is this product good enough where I spend $1 on ads and will I get $5 return? I would also say other red flags in e-commerce, competition. Look, drop shipping isn't really interesting for a buyer. You need to have a good brand around it. So I would say that, of course, drop shipping businesses sell, but not for interesting multiples. So I would say, having a strong brand, they're probably the core red flags that I would say.
Great. So I've covered most of the questions. I have one last question to conclude with. That's a question probably be in mind of anybody else. It's in my mind at the moment as well. Why would anyone choose Flippa over the other marketplaces, other websites available? Why would anybody choose Flippa?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I would say, first and foremost, we are the largest marketplace. The way to drive demand of your business and drive the price is by having more interest from other buyers. There's no other marketplace, our competitors, right, that have a larger buyer pool than us. And that's very clear in the amount of deals that we do and volume that we do. We do a higher number of volume than our next competitor. I would say the second thing as well is our advisors are very, very experienced, right? We have advisors, an ex-managing director from a New York investment bank who focused on e-commerce. We have also an ex-advisor from Goldman Sachs. We have an ex-manager from Facebook and LinkedIn. So she knows very well, and she focused on e-commerce brands. So we have real kind of, I'd say, advisors that have a genuine, passion and understanding in the industry. And there's not many, if you look at the other marketplaces, they don't offer, I would say, that same level of service. And that's clear in the volume that we do. I think the fact that we back ourselves on success fee, there's not many kind of players out there which give the level of service that we do with such a low cost up front, let's say. So for me, they're kind of the core things.
Great. Sorry, but it's an interesting question, so I just have to pull it up.
Of course, no worries.
Akash has asked on our YouTube, how do you evaluate if a trending digital asset is sustainable or just a passing fad?
Yeah. So I think age, it comes back to that again. If it passes the age test, then look at the competitors out there. Look at if there are a lot of competitors, then look at the supplier relationships that you have with, or that the business has. Evaluate those. Evaluate the terms. I think they're probably the key things, I'd say.
Interesting. That makes sense. Oh, that finishes up all our questions. Wow, that was quite interacting. I was not expecting it.
Yeah. That's good. That's what we want, right? It's always more interesting to have
exactly.
questions, and we'll have to do another one.
That's what we wanted, man.
Yeah,
Definitely. So I would like to conclude at the end that this session is just a beginning of what we are trying to do. And this is just an introduction, so everybody should know, understand what we are doing, what we are trying to collaborate with. And Flippa, obviously, everybody knows about Flippa, but they don't know much about how one can buy or sell their assets through Flippa. What are the core factors to consider? What are the techniques? What are the complex situations to avoid? What are the technical stuff to handle? What are the financial stuff to handle? What are the probing factors one can look into before trying to sell off or buying any assets through Flippa? So there are too many things, too many educational stuff to understand, too many knowledge barriers to beat in order to sell or build their assets. So I think this is it for today, and this is something really interesting conversation that we have. Hopefully, if anybody is interested to learn or understand more, or want to get more education about it, want to actually evaluate your assets, or want to actually buy any of the assets through flippa.com or through this collaboration, which we are expecting us to be doing. So you can feel free to reach out to Exponential to understand the technical part of your evaluations. If you need any consultation, any support in the financial parameters, in the P&Ls, what are the things to look into, what are things to consider, what are the multiples that we would want you to evaluate, what are the factors that we would want you to relook upon, we are gonna provide you free consultation for your first instant. If you would like to understand about your asset situation at the moment, the valuation situation at the moment, and definitely we will take you forward to flippa.com for the further processes and other important considerations to fulfill. So that's the conclusion I would like to give to anybody who is in this space and would really want to build something of their own and would really want to build their wealth through flipping of these digital assets. Because this is how, and that's how one can build their wealth through e-commerce or any of the digital assets they are building right now. So I think this is it from my end. Dominic, if you would like to have any conclusive words from your end, then feel free to do so. I really appreciate, and we should all appreciate Dominic's time here. He has answered every question in a very simplest manner one can definitely provide. So this is really appreciable, Dominic. Thank you so much for your participation, for your
Of
detailed
course.
responses to all of us. Really
Of course.
appreciate, the whole community appreciates this. Thank you. If anything you would like to say at the end for any of for our audience.
No, I mean, I think everything's said. So yeah, thank you for having me. I'd love to come on again at some point. And you know,
Yeah,
it's good to have all these questions. It's way more engaging rather than me talking the whole time. So
yeah,
it's
exactly.
clear that you know, our listeners are certainly engaged and asking the right questions. They're asking very good questions and the
Yeah.
questions that I deal with every day. So thank you also everyone for your time. You know, on a Saturday as well. You know, it's very good to see the dedication. And also, Danish, thank you for having me as well.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate, and you're most welcome. So it's a great conversation, guys. Thank you everybody for watching us and being an amazing audience, so interactive and asking all the relevant technical questions. So it's really good to have an educated community, an educated audience to run these podcasts, and it helps us to build our confidence to run more of these sessions and obviously help the community in the best possible way, whatever we can. So thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Dominic. Hope to see you guys again. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care. Bye bye.